When a company talks about their internal safety protocols, usually picture this like impenetrable fortress.
Right, absolutely. Thick walls, heavy gates.
Exactly. You imagine this rigorous multi-point checklist just to even get through the front door. But today we are doing a deep dive into a thought leadership paper by SNSD consultants that proves, well, that fortress has a gaping hole in the back wall.
Yeah, it really does.
We're looking at a massive stack of data covering high-hazard operations, just trying to figure out why that perimeter is failing for you, the listener. And the source leads with a statistic that just completely sets the tone.
It's a heavy one.
It is. 80% of serious injuries and fatalities, or SIFs, occur due to poor contractor management.
Yeah, that 80% figure, it really shatters the illusion of that secure perimeter we were just talking about.
Totally.
The paper argues that companies spend an incredible amount of resources securing their own internal workforce, right? Only to outsource the vast majority of their actual physical execution to third parties.
Which is wild when you think about it.
It is. And the frameworks used to manage those third parties are, frankly, fundamentally broken.
So today, we're going to explore exactly why the current heavily paperwork-reliant safety systems in these logistically complex industries are just completely failing.
And more importantly, what we can do about it.
Right. We're going to look at how a shift to what the source calls dynamic risk control and the strategic use of AI is stepping in to actually save lives. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Sounds good. To really understand the mechanics of how to fix this, we first have to look at where the system actually breaks down in the real world.
Yeah, the raw data.
Exactly. The source pulls from several major databases. For instance, the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers, the IOGP, showed in their 2024 data that contractor employees accounted for 26 out of 32 total fatalities.
Wow.
Yeah. Their fatal accident rate was significantly higher than the company's direct employees.
And it gets even starker when you look at downstream operations, the refining and processing side.
Oh, the Conca data.
Yeah. According to the 2024 European data from Conca, literally 100% of reported fatalities were contractors.
Every single one. It's devastating.
Every single one. And it spans across industries, too. In U.S. construction, contractors accounted for, I think, 52% of fatal injuries.
Right. And nearly 63% of fatal falls.
And in mining, it was over 40% recently. But, looking at these numbers, I have to play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay.
Wait. Does this just mean contractors are inherently cutting corners? Like, are these corporations just hiring the lowest bidding, least qualified crews to save a buck?
Well, what's fascinating here is the data explicitly rejects that whole contractor blame narrative.
Really?
Yeah. Contractor involvement does not equal contractor fault. The core thesis of the SNSD paper is that the problem lies in the operator-contractor interface.
Okay, the interface. What does that actually mean?
That interface is the exact point where a company's planning meets the contractor's physical execution. And right now, that interface is where operational risk is being created or transferred or just completely diluted.
So it's not the people on the ground.
No, the workers aren't inherently the problem. The issue is that the administrative tools governing them are just entirely mismatched to the reality of the work.
Wait, when you say administrative tools, I'm picturing like safety manuals or daily checklists, but you mean the broader corporate governance, right?
Precisely. Yeah, the way procurement and contracts are handled.
Okay.
Most companies try to govern real-time operational risk using procurement tools. Think about, annual corporate audits, generic pre-qualification forms, liability insurance checks.
Right, the stuff you fill out once a year.
Exactly. Those documents tell you if a contractor is legally and financially compliant on paper in January. They do absolutely nothing to verify if that specific crew, standing on the site in July, is actually equipped to handle the nuanced, real-time hazards of the job.
So you have these high-risk crews basically getting waved through the gate based on generic paperwork.
Exactly.
If the tools are fundamentally wrong, we need to identify how they fail structurally, right? Before we can build a replacement.
Right, and the source outlines 5 structural failures of these conventional systems.
Yeah, and the first major flaw they identify is risk-blind contractor segmentation.
Right, and segmentation in this context just means how you categorize your vendors. So risk-blind segmentation means treating all contractors with broadly similar administrative controls, regardless of their actual physical risk profile.
They all go through the same machine.
Exactly. The corporate system processes everyone through the exact same bureaucratic funnel.
So risk-blind segmentation is like putting a high-risk scaffolding crew working 100 feet in the air through the exact same 50-page safety onboarding as the company bringing in the office catering.
That is a perfect analogy, yes.
No wonder the system breaks down. You are spending the same amount of corporate energy on the sandwich delivery as you are on the people assembling heavy steel.
Which means you are spreading your safety resources incredibly thin. By over-managing low-risk work, you end up under-managing the high-risk work.
Where the fatalities actually happen.
Right, and that directly feeds into the next structural failure, which is treating mobilization as just a paperwork exercise.
Mobilization being when they actually show up to the site?
Exactly. In a broken system, gate security or some low-level admin just checks if the workers have, watched an induction video or signed a form.
Nobody is physically checking the gear.
Right. Nobody is physically verifying if the crew, their specific lifting equipment, and their designated supervisors are physically ready to execute the critical tasks safely.
It is just entirely passive, and that points to a much deeper delusion the paper highlights, which is this over-reliance on lagging indicators.
Yes. Things like the total recordable incident rate, or TRAR.
Which is just a measure of past injuries, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is a critical point. Relying on historical injury rates to predict future capability is like assuming a specific mutual fund will perform well tomorrow simply because it did well last year.
Right. The market changes.
The underlying conditions change. The crew composition, the weather, the equipment fatigue, it's all entirely different. Period-to-period variation in historical safety metrics is statistically unstable.
So past performance does not guarantee future survival in a high-hazard environment.
No, it absolutely does not.
Which brings us to the final major structural failure we're covering: undefined ownership.
Yeah, this one is huge.
The source explains that accountability for a contractor safety is often spread across the procurement department, the on-site operations team, and the corporate safety department.
And when a process is owned by a committee, well, nobody actually owns the final result.
Right. Everyone thinks someone else is handling it.
Exactly. No single operational leader is making the critical, on-the-ground risk decisions. Procurement hired them, safety audited them, ops tells them what to do.
And if an incident happens, everyone just points fingers at the other departments.
Always.
This actually tees up a concept from the source that I think perfectly diagnoses why the system fails.
Right.
Could you explain their design principle rule?
Oh, I love this rule. The source states this golden rule for evaluating any safety process. They say, if a contractor HSE control does not change a decision, change a behavior, verify a critical capability, or trigger an escalation, it is probably documentation, not control.
Wow. If it doesn't change your behavior, it's just paper.
Exactly. It is a brilliant filtering mechanism.
Because a sign form in a filing cabinet doesn't stop a dropped wrench?
No, it doesn't.
So once a company accepts that static paperwork is just an illusion of safety, the natural next step is to explore what a functional system actually looks like. And the source presents a completely redesigned 3-layer system.
Right, and the sequence of these 3 layers is very intentional.
Okay, walk us through them.
Layer 1 is risk and mode foundations. Layer 2 is governance and verification. And Layer 3 is partnership and continuous visibility.
I want to dig into the mechanics of Layer 1, those risk and mode foundations. Because the paper talks about legally binding expectations. What does that actually look like in practice?
Whoa.
Are they just adding a line to a contract that says, please be safe?
No, far from it. Legally binding in Layer 1 means moving away from those boilerplate legal clauses. It means analyzing the specific physical work, say, deep trench excavation, and embedding verifiable safety milestones directly into the commercial terms.
Okay, so tying safety to the money.
Exactly. The contractor doesn't get paid just for moving dirt. The contract stipulates they must provide specific trench shoring plans and competency certificates for the operators before the invoice is even valid.
Oh, wow. So the safety requirements literally become commercial requirements.
Yes. That forces procurement to care about the execution.
And that flows right into Layer 2, governance and verification. Because under this layer, they introduce a role that solves the undefined ownership problem we discussed earlier. The contract holder.
Right. The contract holder is a single named individual with authorized accountability.
So not a committee.
Not a committee. They aren't just an administrator shuffling forms. They are an operational leader who owns the risk across the entire life cycle of that specific contract.
So if that trench excavation goes wrong, the contract holder is the one answering for it.
Exactly.
Now, to give that contract holder a framework, the source outlines a 12-stage contractor management cycle.
Which I know sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, looking at a 12-stage cycle, it initially sounds like they just invented 12 new bureaucratic hoops to jump through.
Right. But the paper emphasizes this is an evidence-based chain. It moves from the very beginning, pre-award evaluation, all the way through mobilization, active field verification, and final closeout.
And every stage generates physical evidence that the next stage relies upon.
Exactly. And that evidence chain leads to the most significant philosophical shift in the entire paper.
Which is?
Moving from static assessment to dynamic control.
Okay, break that down for us.
Traditional systems ask a static question, like, did the contractor pass our corporate assessment 6 months ago? But a dynamic control system forces the contract holder to ask, is this contractor's operational risk profile improving, deteriorating, or remaining stable right now, today?
Because site conditions change by the hour.
Constantly.
A supervisor calls in sick, a crane blows a hydraulic seal, or, a sudden storm makes the ground unstable. You cannot rely on a certificate printed in January if you are doing hazardous work in July.
You really can't.
But practically speaking, how does a contract holder measure risk dynamically?
Well, you shift away from those lagging indicators like past injuries, and you track leading indicators.
Like what?
For example, are daily field inspections turning up an increasing number of minor hazards? Or are the specific workers who were approved for the high-risk tasks actually the ones scanning their badges at the gate today?
So taking live data and connecting it to immediate operational decisions.
Exactly. Like pausing the work until the right supervisor actually arrives on site.
Now, it is relatively easy to design a perfect 12-step dynamic cycle on a whiteboard in a quiet corporate office.
Oh, sure.
It is an entirely different beast to see if that system holds up under the crushing reality of a sprawling industrial project. Which brings us to the first major case study in the source, the mega turnaround.
Right. And a turnaround is essentially a planned, highly coordinated shutdown of an industrial plant to perform, like, years' worth of maintenance in just a few weeks.
It's the ultimate stress test.
It is the absolute ultimate stress test for any management system.
The numbers in this case study are just staggering. They compress 3.2 million man-hours into just 52 days.
Yeah.
They had 14 distinct high-risk contractors who made up 85% of the total workforce on site, and the final result was 0 serious injuries or fatalities, 0 SUFs.
Which is an exceptional achievement given the density and pace of the work. I mean, to understand the scale, at the peak of this 52-day window, the site was issuing around 1,300 work permits a single day.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The source points out that at 1,300 permits a day, a permit system fundamentally breaks down.
It really does.
It stops being an engineering control and just becomes a toll booth. That's not a safety check. That's just a line at the DMV.
Yeah, you aren't actually evaluating the safety of the work being proposed. You are just blindly signing the ticket to keep the line moving.
Right, because supervisors just start blindly signing forms. The human capacity to evaluate risk is totally overrun by the sheer volume of paper.
And that is exactly how fatalities happen during turnarounds. Supervisors sign off on confined space entries without checking the ventilation because they have, 50 other forms waiting on their desk.
So the question is, how did this specific project survive that toll booth effect and achieve 0 SIFs?
They front-loaded the readiness. They evaluated those 14 high-risk contractors intensely well before the shutdown ever began.
They didn't wait until day 1 to find out a crew was bringing in faulty equipment.
Precisely. They identified the gaps early and replaced reactive, overloaded oversight with 290 specific owned gap closure actions.
Okay, unpack a gap closure action for me. What does that actually look like on the ground?
It means moving from a vague concern to a verified action. For instance, if the pre-evaluation showed a contractor's specialized welding crew had outdated certifications, a gap closure isn't just sending an email asking them to update their files.
Right, emails get ignored.
Exactly. The gap closure assigns a named individual, the contract holder, to physically verify the new valid certifications before those specific welders are ever allowed to mobilize to the site.
Because they had named owners verifying the readiness before the chaos started, the 52-day execution phase was just about managing the daily work, not fighting administrative fires.
Exactly.
But, that mega turnaround proves the model works for an isolated, highly focused event. When you zoom out, a new logistical hurdle emerges.
Yeah.
How does an enterprise scale this intense level of human coordination across hundreds of contractors year-round without burning everyone out?
Which leads perfectly into the second case study. The paper analyzes a client managing their entire portfolio over 18 months.
And they had, what, 267 contractors?
Yes, 267 different contractors. And when they finally applied this new dynamic assessment model, 11 of those contractors were formally red-banded.
Meaning they basically failed, right? They fell below the critical safety capability thresholds.
Right. Now, in the old paradigm, a company might just terminate those 11 contractors and try to procure new ones, which, as you can imagine, disrupts the supply chain and halts operations.
Yeah, a massive headache.
But this case study highlights a remarkable cultural shift. They did not fire those 11 contractors.
Wow, really?
Yeah, instead they put them on structured gap closure plans. They partnered with them to rebuild their capabilities.
And did it work?
It did.
Yeah.
The result was that all 11 cleared the red band through targeted improvement. Across the entire portfolio, this collaborative approach drove a greater than 90% reduction in life-saving rule violations.
Okay, just for context for the listener, a life-saving rule violation is something severe, right? Like a worker bypassing a safety lock on a live electrical panel or working on a high beam without a harness.
Exactly. These are the direct precursors to fatalities. So dropping those violations by 90% means the environment fundamentally changed.
That's incredible.
Furthermore, they saw a 40 times increase in proactive observation reporting from the contractors themselves. The workers felt empowered to spot and report hazards rather than hiding them from the client.
But the source identifies a severe bottleneck here, right? Managing 267 contractors through a 12-stage cycle, tracking hundreds of gap closures, monitoring daily field observations. Doing all of that manually requires chasing data across fragmented email chains, scattered spreadsheets, and paper forms.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Human coordination simply does not scale to that degree without something slipping through the cracks.
You're completely right. The methodology is robust, but the administrative burden of executing it manually makes the whole system incredibly fragile. It relies way too heavily on perfect human memory and flawless communication.
Enter the digital layer. The source introduces a mobile platform called SafetyBud and the integration of AI.
Yes.
By using AI to assist in scoring the complex contractor capability assessments, the company reduced the evaluation effort by 83%.
Which is huge.
They took a grueling process that used to require nearly 2 weeks and 50 different communication touchpoints and compressed it down to a matter of seconds. Now I have to stop here. Are we genuinely letting a language model or an AI chatbot decide if a high-hazard mining crew is safe to operate heavy machinery? Because automating high-stakes risk evaluation sounds deeply alarming. That sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is crucial to understand the mechanism of how the AI is actually deployed here.
Okay.
The source explicitly defines the AI as an assurance enabler, not a replacement for human judgment.
So what is the difference? How does an assurance enabler function?
The AI is tasked with the heavy lifting of unstructured data digestion. It scans the hundreds of pages of training logs, previous incident reports, equipment maintenance records, and safety manuals provided by the contractor.
All the boring stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It synthesizes that fragmented documentation instantly and highlights the discrepancies. The source actually notes the AI achieved greater than 90% alignment with expert human review.
Oh, wow.
But, and this is key, the system does not make the final approval. The human contract holder is still the one reviewing the AI's brief and making the final authorization.
So the AI acts as the ultimate research assistant. It pulls all the relevant needles out of the haystack so the human expert can actually examine them.
Exactly. And this leads to the most important aha moment in the entire paper, the concept of decision velocity.
Decision velocity.
Yes. The core realization is that having more data doesn't equal more safety if humans do not have the time to process it. By digitizing the workflow and using AI to process the paperwork instantly, you drastically increase the speed at which a human can make an informed decision.
Because those highly trained safety experts and contract holders are freed from sitting at a desk cross-referencing spreadsheets.
Exactly. They get their time back.
And what do they do with that time? They go out into the field.
Right.
They perform the physical site verifications. The AI handles the static paperwork so the humans can manage the dynamic reality. It actually strengthens human accountability because the leaders are finally doing what they do best, interacting with the environment, talking to the crews, and making nuanced safety decisions on the ground.
That is the ultimate goal, moving safety from a static, procurement-driven checklist to a dynamic, digitally enabled operational reality. You dismantle the illusion of the static fortress, and you build an active, living immune system.
I think that framework moving from a fortress to an immune system is incredibly powerful. And it is vital to recognize that even if you aren't managing an offshore oil rig or overseeing a massive turnaround at a chemical plant, this lesson applies entirely to how we manage external partnerships and outsourced risk in any business.
Oh, 100%.
If you are relying on an annual vendor survey to tell you if your IT supply chain is secure or if your logistics partners are compliant, you are essentially relying on a static piece of paper to govern a dynamic, real-world risk.
The underlying principles translate perfectly. Establishing named ownership, maintaining continuous visibility, and treating readiness as a constantly fluctuating state, those are universal requirements for managing outsourced risk.
We have covered some truly transformative ground today, unpacking everything from the failure of risk-blind segmentation to the power of decision velocity. But as always, I know you have one final thread for us to pull on before we wrap up.
I do, yeah. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building directly on the source's critique of lagging indicators.
Let's hear it.
The data definitively proved that relying on historical metrics like the total recordable incident rate creates a dangerous false sense of security, right? Because past performance in a complex system cannot predict future outcomes.
Right.
It makes you wonder, in your own industry, in your own specific role, what historical success metrics or backward-looking dashboards are you relying on right now? What numbers are you staring at that might be giving you a completely false sense of control over your future risks?
What backward-looking dashboards are giving you a false sense of control? That is a phenomenal question to end on, because as we learned today, just because the structural integrity looked flawless on paper 6 months ago does not mean the walls are still standing today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the data, keep looking for the dynamic reality behind the paperwork, and we'll catch you next time.